Welcome to the Homeschool Plus conference and Noel Kuriakos, who's going to speak to us in a minute. I'd like to introduce Noel a little bit. Noel is a quantified teacher and technologist focused on STEM domains and improving learning outcomes through procedural fluency and content mastery. He leverages data and analytics to inform instruction and to create a self-directed learning environment for learners. I'd like to thank our sponsors, Homeschool Live, G3 and Home Education Magazine, and of course Blackboard Collaborate. And if everybody would like to show us where they're from, to the left of the whiteboard there are tools. The second one down is a star or a sun. If you'd like to click on it and put it where you live in the world, also write down in the chat box where you're from, what time it is where you are, what the weather's like, so we know. Okay, if everybody's done that. Mine keeps on going off. Oops. Okay, so if you'd like to start, Noel? Thank you. Noel, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, loud and clear. Great.
Okay, sorry about that. Good morning, everyone. My name is Noel Kuriakos, and as Maisie said, I am a teacher. I'd like to call myself a quantified teacher because I like to use a lot of data to help me become a better instructor, but most importantly, to help my students and learners to become better learners and to help themselves become self-directed and become the best learner that they can be. In my previous career as a software product manager in business intelligence, I used a lot of data to help me and my customers make decisions.
Oh dear, I think Noel's having a few bandwidth problems. Can you hear me, Noel? Noel, can you hear me? Well, it seems as if you're having some bandwidth problems. I hope things are sorting themselves out for you. If you'd like to write in the chat box so I know what's going on.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay. So like I said, I'm a teacher. I teach a middle school math, science, and technology and engineering. And I also do some tutoring for some students. And I use a digital learning platform throughout my teaching, as I like to collect data so I can help differentiate my students, and I can help them based on their learning style and their learning rate. And I'll be able to do that by having data specifically about them and how they learn. And after talking to some people who are in homeschooling environment, I realized that homeschoolers can use this kind of technology to improve their homeschooling effectiveness in a couple ways, and I'll cover that. One is the democratization of content, meaning homeschoolers, especially with the ubiquitous presence of the internet, have access to a multitude of content, either textual content, audiovisual content, and basically the world is truly an oyster for homeschooling. Instead of relying on pre-canned curriculum from either homeschooling companies or some of the big name publishers or small publishers, homeschoolers can really access content that's recent and relevant, because that's what's very important to learners for most subject domains. So it's very important, especially for homeschoolers, to use technology to implement their homeschooling. And because homeschooling is really one-to-one, and more homeschoolers are belonging to cooperatives where they kind of distribute the learning and teaching load among a group of homeschoolers, having a personalized learning plan is very important. More and more schools are starting to realize that instead of herding students into a classroom and having just one type of curriculum, that every learner is different and they have different learning styles and the way they learn. So therefore, it makes sense to have a personalized learning plan. And technology helps homeschoolers create this learning plan, especially if they have 1, 2, 3, or 4 homeschoolers. And homeschooling and technology can help the learner become self-directed. We want learners to go and learn for themselves, especially when they enter the world as an adult, and especially from what I've seen in my own industry, software, and a lot of the other industries. You really have to be a lifelong learner, and you really need to have that passion for learning. And technology with the digital learning platform gives that practice to these students to help them learn. And what they learn is basically how to master content in terms of knowing their information, knowing the basic information, and then depending on the domain, like especially math, science, computer science, you really need procedural fluency. Can they repeat something over and over again until they've mastered it? And technology can help this in a homeschooling environment. And overall, because of the technology, the students are better prepared. Instead of being limited to a curriculum by other homeschooling companies or a big publisher, using technology, especially a digital learning platform, today's homeschool learners can not only have better learning, meaning the depth of their content and the type of content is much better, much richer, much fuller, so they have a holistic education. They're also prepared because using technology is becoming more and more prevalent. They need to learn how to access information. They need to learn how to manipulate information digitally so that when they go to college or high school, if they don't homeschool in high school, and in the real world, the real work environment, they really need to know how to access information, analyze information, and use that information. And technology, especially in a homeschooling environment, allows them to do that. So, what is a digital learning platform? basically, there are a couple attributes to a digital learning platform. One is that integrates the learning environment. So instead of having a book or an article or music or going to the library and finding things, a digital learning platform brings everything together. So not only is the learner an integral part of the learning environment, but the teacher or the curator or the guide on the side, however you want to label the person guiding the learner, they're also part of the environment. And also, the environment is the automation that takes place, all the manual work that's gone from trying to track the learner, trying to schedule the learner, trying to create and curate the right content for the learner. All that is part of the digital learning environment. So the whole process of learning and teaching and the administrative aspect of tracking the information is, especially in the homeschooling environment, a lot of states have regulatory requirements of tracking, attendance and what is the curriculum, what did they learn, things like that. And you as a parent or a homeschool teacher or instructor want to know what is the content that the student has mastered. What is the procedure that they're becoming fluent at, especially when they take standardized tests, things like that. You really want to make sure that they're prepared for it. So all that tracking and analyzing is part of the digital learning platform. And one of the most important aspects of it is that in the digital learning platform, learning really takes place anywhere, anytime, on any device. Especially with today's learners being very proficient at using digital devices, either smartphones, tablets, laptops, they can access this information anytime. And the great part, in my opinion, about homeschooling is learning really takes place at any time. And with a digital learning platform, that information is there at your fingertips. So, and what I mean by that is if you're going on a field trip, you can actually have a survey, you can have a lesson on a tablet or on a phone so that the student actually can understand or keep track of what they're learning, and you can assess whether they're actually have been learning something. If you go on a grocery trip to the store, there's tons of opportunities for learning. And again, a digital learning platform allows you to do that. And it's just a natural way to learn. Going to a school, sitting in a classroom for 7 hours a day, 6 hours a day, depending on which state you're in, is not the natural way to learn. And in my opinion, is that when you come to school, some of that natural ways of learning is kind of like driven out of you. So homeschooling, using a digital learning platform, actually brings back that natural way of learning. And the digital learning platform presents the content, cues the content for the learner at the right moment, and allows the teacher or the administrator actually to track all this so they can understand what they've done, so they can prepare for the next step in the learning process. And like I mentioned, it really automates the learning management aspect of it. A digital learning platform, the real essence of the digital learning platform is that it automates. It takes a lot of the manual process of creating the learning content. For example, instead of having to develop things, you can go onto the internet and you can find so much content that can be used for learning. I constantly, for my science class, have my students look at Google News, the science section, to find what is relevant. And we read the articles together, we analyze the articles together, and for my tutoring students, I do the same thing. I assign them a very good article, a short article from The Economist, magazines like that, that allow them to help them read at a higher level and kind of push them to reading better level content. So it really automates finding those content, presenting that content to the learner. And again, you're not going to get mastery and procedural fluency unless you have opportunity to practice. So once the content is familiarized by the learner, you need to practice. And I'm not sure how many parents or instructors, homeschool instructors, want to sit and grade and regrade a a lot of the practice material. And this is where the digital learning platform comes in, especially good ones that are very adaptive, meaning they know the style of the learner, they know where they're at, and from a level perspective, it provides them opportunity to practice. And as they get more proficient, it automatically moves them to the next level so they can either hone their existing level of proficiency or move to the next level so they're getting practice. And again, there's so many opportunities in terms of time in the day, time of the week, where you can practice, and having that automated allows the instructor to spend more time either curating content, creating content for the next lesson or future lessons, and let the learner practice. And again, kids want to learn when they want to learn, so when they want to practice, they can practice by having access to this kind of content on the digital learning platform. And then again, like I said, tracking all this. If you don't track, if you don't measure, you really are not going to get a good understanding of where the learner is and where they're at, because and then you'll be shortchanging them. So a good digital learning platform really tracks very minute level of information automatically, so that you can have the information as a content creator or an instructor to see where they're at, and more importantly, where they can go and help them get there through a lot of the minute levels of information. And the other aspect of a digital learning platform, or a very good digital learning platform, is learner centricity. That, what I mean is, a lot of traditional applications out there in classrooms and for homeschooling is really is developed from a teacher's perspective, how to make it easy to administer the content from an instructor-teacher perspective. With the advent of a digital learning platform, because that is so much more easier, the focus is now back on the learner. How to adapt a learning environment, how to create the learning environment so that the learner is the front and center, so they're learning the best, because ultimately that's why you're there homeschooling them, is for their benefit. So therefore, the digital learning platform has to be very learner-centric. What that means is it has to be very easy to use. A student should be able to use it on a mobile device, a tablet, or a PC or a laptop, so that they can access the content when they want without having to go through training and learn a lot of steps. And especially with today's digital learners, it has to be engaging, and that's why a lot of kids, even very intelligent kids, are kind of bored with your traditional school or your traditional homeschooling approach, where it's a lot of paper-based and not much multimedia, and it doesn't kind of give them some sort of kind of like game kind of based learning. And good digital learning platforms does do that. You can insert videos, you can provide magazines, you can provide podcasts, audio clips from SoundCloud, and make it really engaging. And especially for some of the content, unless it's visual, unless it's auditory, it's very hard to get the gist of it from just reading something in a book or looking at some sort of worksheet. And especially math and spatial skills, especially if you have girls in your learning environment, and homeschooling learning environment, it's very important to develop their spatial skills early. And a lot of the online and online digital experience can help them with that. And with a digital learning platform that can handle that, you really make the learning process much, much better. It has to be adaptive. As an instructor, the purpose of the learning platform is to make the administration of the content and the learning process much easier. So one of the things is to provide the right content to the right learner at the right time at the right level. And that's what a good digital learning platform does. It's very adaptive. It knows that the student has learned this content, and now it's time to master that content. So the next level of difficulty is presented to them, and the learner tries to learn and master that level. And if it's not adaptive, meaning it doesn't take into account the learning rate and the learning style of the learner, then you're just spending the same amount of work as you're now trying to fit the content to the learner. So a good digital learning platform really is adaptive and will help you with your administrative aspects of administering the content, but also will help the learner progress faster. There is no lapse in time from going from one level to the next. And it has to be holistic, meaning it can't be just the academic learning domains. It has to be also the 21st century skills. And what I mean by that is developing that grit and the growth mindset. Grit is a concept that was discovered or has been formalized by Angela Duckworth of the University of Pennsylvania, where she's shown that successful people, successful learners are the ones who stick to it, and especially when things are challenging, and they learn how to stick with it, and they learn how to repeat even in the face of failure, so that they can advance to the next level. And you really need that kind of skill sets there, because that's very crucial for learning, especially learning and progressing from one level to another. And the other is by, I believe it's Deborah Dweck. I may have gotten her first name wrong, out of Stanford, and she came up with the growth mindset, where there's increasing research showing that if learners believe that they can do better by working hard and by putting a lot of effort into it, that's what determines their smartness, and not that they're born with it. So you need to help them prepare their mind to know that if they work hard and if they stick through it, that's what actually makes them smarter, and not that they're born. And this allows them to tackle increasing levels of difficulty in terms of the content and trying to be more procedurally fluent. And a good digital learning platform really allows them to do that by providing them with more challenging content, providing them with opportunities to practice, and really providing them feedback, instant feedback as to how they're doing, so that they understand that they're actually learning. So it'll show them that a good example is, for example, if you provide a diagnostic before you start some sort of new learning unit, let's say, and clearly the learner is not going to do well because they don't know it. And then you provide them with the mid-unit assessment, and then you provide them with the end of the unit assessment, and now, which can be the same type, which is the same assessment that you gave before, and now they can see that they started out by not learning anything, and by learning, meaning by focusing on the content and through practice, that they've actually learned, and then hopefully they've mastered it. This gives them that growth mindset, that skill that they need. This shows them that if they stick to something and they stick to it continuously, that they will actually learn and are actually getting smarter, and because of that. So a good digital learning platform gives them the opportunity to not only learn the academic subjects, but also the non-academic and what people would term as the 21st century skills. So how does it work in terms of the digital learning platform? The definition that I use a lot is that it's a cloud-based system, and really there's no technical skills involved. If you know how to use a browser and log into a platform, that is all what you need. And a good digital learning platform does that for you. You don't have to worry about installing software. You don't have to worry about the technology. You can whip up a phone and you can go to the app, or you can browse to their website, whatever it is, and you can access that, and it's there. So it's cloud-based. You don't have to worry about anything in terms of from a technical perspective. And you really have to have a good way to create content and curate content. And what I mean by that is, if you're a single instructor with a single student in a homeschool environment, or if you have multiple students, or if you're collaborating with multiple instructors, and this is the cooperative homeschool environment that's actually growing because of the internet, and with a good digital learning platform, this actually makes it very easy to collaborate with people across the country, across the world. And what I mean by that is specialists can develop content and curate content. So if I'm good at math, I can say, okay, I will develop the math domain units and the learning progressions for our homeschoolers. And if you're good at history and social studies, you take care of that. all that can be created if they choose to, or curated, meaning bringing content together in one place. And that should be a very easy process because that can be time consuming. You'd rather spend the time finding content and creating good content than having to manually do it. So you don't have to worry about copying. If you're doing it on a paper base, you don't have to worry about ordering curriculum books. You don't have to worry about all the environmentally unfriendly things that you have to do. And a good digital learning platform is everything's on the cloud. You don't have to worry about it from a content creation and curation perspective. And then clearly, you need to have something that creates assignments and assessments. So these are the bread and butter of a good digital learning platform. Is you need to provide assignments. You need to provide ways for them to practice what they've learned. And these assignments can be what they call closed response, where it's just multiple choice or true false, or truly open response, where they really have to invoke their higher order thinking. And what I mean by that is they actually have to create and synthesize and basically write either short responses or long form responses. And then it has to do everything in between. If you think this is false, tell me why it's false. And this is the nice thing about homeschooling is you can do a lot more of that. And now you can track that on a digital learning platform. So you really have to have those assignments in there. And then you have the assessments, the formative assessments. I like to use the analogy of learning to play an instrument. I took, as an adult, Suzuki violin lessons for 5 years. And it's very similar to learning, where the master or the teacher or the instructor kind of guides you as to how you're doing it. And then you have to practice, and then you end up actually assessing to see, well, how well are you getting there. And you break it up into small little chunks, and then you assess little chunks, and you put the little chunks together, and then you get a bigger piece, a bigger part of the piece that you're learning to play, and then eventually over 4 or 5 weeks of continuous practice and playing, eventually learn the whole piece. And then there's a final assessment. It's not, can you play 80% well or 90% well? Can you play it 100%? And then the level of artistry and proficiency evaluation comes in. Did you do it without making tons of mistakes, or did you not express certain parts of the piece? Things like that are another level of assessment, but you definitely need different levels and types of assessment for a digital learning platform, and that's one of the things that it does. And then you have the analytics and reporting, because you can't manage what you can't measure. And when I mean manage, you're managing the learning process. You want to know what the student needs to learn, especially in some states where they have some standards, or if you have your own standards as a homeschool instructor, you need to have that, and you need to track that. You need to have different levels of that. You need to have big thematic levels. So, for example, we are going to learn about the lithosphere as part of the Earth Science unit. And within the lithosphere, we're going to learn about rock formation. And within the rock formation, we're going to learn the 3 different types of rock formations. So you need to keep track of things like that. And then you need to keep track of, what lessons are mapped to those, and what assignments are mapped to those, and what assessments are mapped to those. So I can see, are they learning? How much are they learning? Have they learned it? And now I can go on to the next level after they've learned it and mastered it. And then you need to do this on a continuous basis. It might be on a daily or a weekly basis. And if it's not automated, it's very hard to manually keep track of, especially when you have to produce reports or some sort of evidence to high schools or colleges, or even some states require you to send in certain information. And especially if your student is going to take some sort of assessment, a formal high-stake testing, you really want to make sure that they cover all the concepts, and you have some way to measure what they're doing. And that's where the analytics and reporting comes in. And then clearly, especially with more and more parents opting to do homeschooling, they are starting to realize that instead of having to reinvent the wheel over and over again, why don't we collaborate? And especially with the internet and the content out there, they're realizing that instead of buying content from homeschool companies that provide curriculum that may be outdated or may not be as robust for your learner, you can actually curate the content by yourself. So if you've done it, maybe other people would love to use that also. Or if you are in a cooperative, you can collaborate and you can actually create content in different domains and share them. And a digital learning platform, you can do this very, very easily, especially good ones, where you can create courses and units, and you can actually have the different learners sign in and learn that. And this becomes really economical, so you don't have to actually pay money to obtain the content, and at the same time, you are being very cooperative and collaborative with people across the world, basically, and now your learning becomes much more richer. I'm a strong believer that education and learning should be free, so that as more people are becoming educated, you're providing opportunities for them to basically solve the world's problems. And the more people we can have solving problems, the more solutions we can come up with and more affordable those solutions can be. So by collaborating and distributing content, homeschoolers can help each other out in multiple ways. So why should you consider using one, right? There's no reason for you to consider. You can continue doing what you're doing today. It might be an online curriculum that just provides you access to an existing pre-formatted or pre-made curriculum. Or you can use your manual methods. You can order the books and content online, and you can do that manually. You can absolutely do that. But there are very, very good arguments as to why you should use a digital learning platform, especially given where technology has come, and especially with the content out there. So one is definitely efficiency. You save a lot of time and money with a digital learning platform. You have, like I said, especially if you distribute the workload, you have multiple people doing work that you now no longer have to do, and you can focus on it. And because you're focusing on it, the content that you create or curate is much richer, so that everyone benefits, especially learners. And then you don't have to spend money buying curriculum or sending tests back, things like that. So it actually becomes very efficient from a time savings perspective and from a saving money. Plus you have flexibility in a digital learning platform, meaning that you can have the content and you can have any level and type of content on there. So you can have preschoolers, kindergartners, all the way to high school content there. And it can be very rigid in terms of how traditionally you have it. This is first grade, second grade, third grade, and more research has shown that and especially with the history of education, that's really is an arbitrary cutoff in terms of using age and making that grade based. And they're showing that learners can actually learn more things earlier, especially certain things. So a digital learning platform is really flexible, so the learner can be very fluid. They may be learning at grade, quote at grade, at one domain, but they may excel at another domain that is much higher than what that they're used to, or they may not excel well because that's their nature of learning. For example, for me, math was very difficult to learn. I had to really struggle and practice a lot for me to become very well. That's just the way I was. But when it came to other domains like especially history and especially analyzing information, especially social studies, especially current events, I was really good at it. I would just be a voracious reader, and I would find multiple viewpoints, read multiple articles on the same topic, things like that. And so, research has shown that we have different styles of learning and rates of learning, and you really need that flexibility. And you really can't do that manually unless you spend a lot of time and money. So if your objective is not to spend a lot of time and money, then definitely a digital learning platform will allow you to do that because it provides you with that flexibility. You can create your own standards for that on the digital learning platform. You can say these are the standards, and then you can map the content in the curriculum to that, and then you can track the learning based on that. And this gives a very good approach to a planned homeschooling environment where you know this is what I want to cover, this is what I need to do, and here's how I'm actually going to accomplish that. So having a well laid out plan gives you a lot of flexibility, especially if you're a parent at home. You know, you've got other things to do also, not just doing the homeschooling. So this flexibility is really important for you to handle life in general along with the homeschooling responsibilities. And then, you know, a good digital learning platform really allows you to be flexible so that it's truly learning, not just academic learning, but learning in general. For example, I know people who are using digital learning platform for sports. For example, reviewing plays, especially for football season coming up. They want to make sure that their students, their child, understands the different plays. And if they have a little smartphone in their hand, they can log into the digital learning platform, and voila, now they can review the plays. The coach can quiz them on their plays, and really kind of get them to do that. Now, it's very hard to do that otherwise, because you have to carry a binder around or a book around, things like that. Or if you have faith-based learning, you can put those standards in there and then map the content to that. If you have music, art, things of that sort, you can use a digital learning platform, outline a standard or adopt standards, create your own standards, and now you can map everything to that. So it's really, really flexible from a digital learning platform if you use a digital learning platform, as opposed to doing it manually, because it'll take you a lot more time, and like I said, it'll probably cost you a little bit more money. And it has to be effective. The purpose of this is you want to make sure that the kids learn. And using a digital learning platform, you get better effectiveness because you're having the depth of content and the type of content versus doing it manually by getting a pre-canned curriculum and content from a homeschooling company or a publisher. So you get much higher effectiveness, and the way you measure the effectiveness is through using the features of the digital learning platform, such as assessments and assignments. And you get to do that as many times as you want. And the best way to learn is to practice and practice and practice. And the digital learning platform allows the learner to do that. And if you think of a video game analogy, it's very similar to learning, where you have different levels of proficiency that you need to do. And the way you get there is by practicing. Nobody, even the best video game player, when they get a new game, they never cruise to the levels the first time they play it. You know, they fail because they need to learn. They fail again, and they learn, and they move a little bit farther. They keep doing that, fail, learn, fail, learn, fail, learn, until they've mastered the level and they go to the next level. And the only way they're doing that is through practice. So with a digital learning platform, you have that ability to practice, 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 and really get them to where they need to go really quickly. So the two other aspects of it has to be engaging, especially today's digital learners. They're used to smartphones, they're used to seeing their friends use it, they're used to seeing other people use it, so they're going to use it. And it's just the way times are. So you want to leverage that and tie in the love of learning by using a digital learning platform. So you can kind of focus the learning content through the digital learning platform so that they can have a very good engaging experience. If it's engaging, then that's where you develop some of those 21st century skills for the love of learning, for lifelong learning. And otherwise, if you're traditionally just using manual methods to learn, when they're out in the real world and expect to do digital learning, it might be a problem. I know people who are today, consider themselves not very tech savvy. These are young people, and I'm surprised because you would think that they would have experience using it, but they just did not have the opportunity to do that. So a really engaging experience not only develops their digital learning skills, but just develops sort of their love of learning in general. And then the digital learning platform is very scalable. You can have it just for one student, you can have a cooperative, or you can really have it as an entire class or a school or an organization. What I mean by that is I know some learning cooperatives where they have this model where they spend some time one-to-one and they come together in a class. Again, this is digitally online where everybody learns the same content, but the learning rate and the type is different. And then there are these organizations that are across the country. It might be some sort of cultural organization, or they're focused on a specific type of learning, and now they have one master curriculum, and people from all over the world log in, and they consume the curriculum. And the digital learning platform allows you to do all of that, and it can be done very seamlessly. The best part also is parents also supplement tutoring, especially in areas that they're not good at, especially the areas that they're not very familiar with. They bring in tutors to help their learners. And a digital learning platform allows them to accomplish this, so that they can actually allow the learners to bring in, the parents can actually bring in tutors. So the tutors now can publish their content, and now they can help the students. So all the learning happens on the digital learning platform in one seamless manner, whether it's the learner accessing it, whether it's the homeschool teacher providing information, a tutor, or basically someone from anywhere in the world. So what does it look like? These are some very simple screenshots that I use from a digital learning platform that I use. And it just shows you some of the high-level aspects of what I was talking about. If you look at the one on the top left, that's just showing you how the content is organized. So there is a structure, and in this case, and this is something that I use for my class. I have a course, and then I have units within the course. And in this case, what you're seeing with the numbers are it's mapped to the Common Core standards. That's just because it's something convenient, and I really believe that most of the Common Core standards is very well laid out, especially for math. I also use Next Generation Science Standards, and I can have something that is consistent, that I believe works, and I can arrange that. Again, in a good digital learning platform, that's very flexible. So you can actually define your units and your standards on there, and then you can see there's a different level of the aggregation, which means there's concepts, and within the concepts there are topics. And the numbers that you see are questions or the question bank. So a good digital learning platform also have a question bank, and this is where the sharing and collaboration comes in really handy. So if you can imagine, there's 4 homeschool parents, and if they use this structure, each of them contributes to it, and pretty soon your content bank becomes very rich and full. And if you share this with across the world, now you can see the real potential of it. Different people can contribute their content in terms of the questions and all in terms of content that they need to access, and also the actual assessment and assignments. And this is the real power, in my opinion, of the digital learning platform. I don't show it here, but you can actually put in links to videos. You can put links to articles, links to audio podcasts. There's a site called SoundCloud that allows you to upload a lot of just audio, and more people are doing it, especially the young people. They love music, and music is a great opportunity to learn a lot about fractions, about scale, ratios, things like that. And by using, and I incorporate that in the digital learning platform, and have assessments next, into it. A lot of content, for example, from PBS. Sometimes I even use Netflix documentaries, just because that's the only place I can have access to them, and my students have access to them. And I can take snippets, and I can put in assessments so that I know that they're actually viewing or listening or reading to it, and I can have these questions automatically prepared. I mean, I prepare them, or I can have other people automatically put it in there, and I can use them. So it's the digital learning platform can be very flexible, especially if it's good at creating content and curate content. I think curation is probably really the best way to go. Like 80% of your content can be curated, meaning there's so much content out there that you can curate, especially if it's recent and relevant. It becomes more engaging to learners because they see that it's more useful. And I come from a constructivist school of thought where learning is really what the learner makes it to be. And if they're part of the experience, there's more deep learning, there's more kind of what they call essential understanding versus just having to read, memorize, recite just for a test. So a lot of the curation of really good content on the digital learning platform comes in very, very handy. From a student's perspective, again, this is just one screen. I don't want to, show lots of screenshots, just some very key ones. But this is something that's how they would actually use from the student's perspective. So they'll see the questions. So in a good digital learning platform, everything's organized. They log in. They know what they need to do in terms of here are the assignments you need to complete. Here are the ones you have completed. You'll have questions that are very well marked up, meaning it's very there's hyperlinks in there. You can highlight. You can put in images. You can have hints, different progressive level of hints, because that's how real learning works, right? If you're stuck on something, instead of you being there in the digital learning platform, a lot of that information is in there. So now this is where the automation also comes in really handy. The different progressive level of hints, so that easy hint, the next level of hint, brings the learner closer and closer to what they really need to learn. So it's really important, a good digital learning platform, to have that. And then the other aspect of it is, to add, what you see on the lower right is add to practice questions, or I guess the answer. This provides the system a way to incorporate this into the adaptive nature of a digital learning platform that I talked about earlier. Meaning, if they guess the answer, or if they want to practice more on this specific question or topic, now the system knows, okay, I need to go find from the content bank this information, and I need to provide them for practice. And again, this is where the collaborative nature of homeschooling can come in using a digital learning platform. You can think about all the parents getting together or classes getting together, creating content, and now you have a large opportunity for students to practice. The more they practice, the more cycles they have to practice, the shorter the learning feedback loop, and the faster they learn, which means they can learn more in the same amount of time for someone who's probably not homeschooled or not using the digital learning platform. And then you can use this on a tablet, so if they have some downtime, 10, 15 minutes, they can learn something really quickly. If they're in the car, they can whip out their cell phone, their smartphone, and bring this up because a good digital learning platform has what's called very good responsive design, so they can use this on a smartphone, a tablet, or on a PC, and they can start learning. Some of my students have to travel 30 minutes to get to our school, so they, in their backseat, they're either learning vocabulary, they're doing math, they're doing test prep, things like that. In a homeschooling environment, if you need to take your kids with you to the grocery tour, you need to run errands, guess what? That's a learning opportunity for them. Bring their smart device with them, and now you're learning. So good digital learning platform really makes efficient use of time so that you as an instructor, a homeschooling instructor, or a parent can really live life and at the same time provide a very good engaging learning experience for your homeschooler. And so just as a quick summary, the homeschooling environment can really be enhanced with a digital learning platform, mainly for two big reasons. One is it's efficient. You eliminate a lot of the manual effort, the manual work that you do with a paper-based system or just having an online system where you have to track everything. There's a lot of analytics that I didn't show you that you can use. For example, how do I know that my homeschooler has mastered this content? I can see exactly how many questions that they've answered for that content, how many times they got it right. I might see increasing levels of difficulty and proficiency, and therefore now I can help them intervene and provide them with some pivot points to say do this versus that, or I can have the system do that for me so that they're kind of on a autopilot for that unit or for that lesson. So this way you can do other things such as curate more content, collaborate with other people for content, create your own content, or do other things that's part of your life that you need to do. So it's really, really makes it efficient. And especially from a reporting perspective, it's really good if you have to produce information for state regulatory purposes or for your own learning progression. You know, it's great to see in a digital learning environment what your kid learned from K through 8. Not that you want to save it or anything, or not that it's super important, but I think we don't value how much our kids have learned. And if you have what I call a learning graph that shows exactly where they started out in and where they ended up, you really are impressed by how well our young people can learn, and the amount that they can learn, and the type of content they can learn, and the way they learn it. And if you have all that information, you know, it's really a good way to help you create a better engaging environment. And using a DLP, digital learning platform, is really effective. You can see that practice, practice, practice allows students to become more proficient and and master content. And a DLP allows you to do that much faster, much quickly. Yes, you can do it the traditional way. There's nothing wrong with the traditional way. But if you don't have that much time, if you want to cover more content, if you want to provide depth of content, richer content, and remember, all these things are something that will make your homeschooler better prepared for higher learning. Either they go to college or they go through another avenue for learning. But so that the DLP really can enhance that. It may not be for all parents, but there's a lot of aspects of the DLP that can enhance the homeschooling environment. And it's clearly learner-centric. The DLP, the new generation or the next generation of DLPs that are cloud-based are learner-centric. It's not from a teacher's perspective or instructor perspective anymore. It's how can I make learning fun for the learner? How can I make it engaging for the learner? How can I get them to love learning? And a very good DLP allows you to do that. And with that, I would like to conclude my presentation. And if you have any questions about this, please feel free to email me. You can follow me at Twitter at @Kuriakos, and I also respond to all my emails. And or if you have ideas or thoughts about what I talked about that you'd like to share, please. And thank you very much for taking your time to listening to this presentation.
Thank you, Noel. That was very informative. Rajesh, do you have any questions or anything? Okay, so I'm going to put a link to the keynote that's coming up now, if you want to get there. And if everybody can leave the room, so I can process the room, and then we can put the recording up.